Hey there. Ready to take a deep dive with us today? We're tackling job performance.
Really gonna unpack it all.
Yeah, we're going beyond just like, those yearly reviews and metrics. We're talking about the criteria, those benchmarks, almost like invisible rulers that we use to measure success. In the workplace, sure, but it goes way beyond that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
This stuff is everywhere.
Yeah, this deep dive is gonna be, I think, a lot more interesting than just, looking at a spreadsheet, for example.
Those spreadsheets today.
Those spreadsheets, we're gonna get into some surprising stuff. I mean, this affects everyone, from your career to even, like, how Grammy winners are chosen.
The Grammys, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Okay, so big question then. How do we even begin to measure success? I mean, is it as straightforward as just like, picking the right test, or is there more to it?
Well, that's the thing. It's way more complicated than it seems. The sources we're diving into called it the criterion problem. It's not just about finding the right test, it's about figuring out what we're even aiming for. Like, what does success even mean in the first place?
Oh, okay. So it's like defining the finish line before we even start the race. I like that.
Exactly. And it's trickier than you might think. Take a university professor, for instance. Their job has so many sides to it. Teaching, doing research, and then all that service to the university. You've got to look at it all, right?
Yeah.
It'd be easy to mess up the criteria if you only measure, say, 2 of those and just kind of forget about the third one.
Right. You get a skewed picture of their performance for sure. It reminds me of how we often get so caught up in the numbers.
Yeah.
Like in the workplace, it's all about sales figures, publications, all those quantifiable metrics. But our sources, they're pushing us to think beyond just the numbers, right?
Yeah. They emphasize this idea of what they call in situ performance. So basically, it's looking at how people perform in the real world, taking into account things like what kind of company culture is there, what's the leadership like, even crazy unexpected events.
Things you can't predict.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know, a global pandemic.
A global pandemic, exactly. Things that can make or break someone's success, even if they have all the talent in the world.
So it's like, even if you're, say, a coding superstar, but you're stuck in a toxic work environment, you might not reach your full potential.
Sadly, that's true. Or let's say you can't adapt to new technology or work well with a team. It's not going to be enough, even if you're great at what you do.
It's about more than just your skills and talent. It's about navigating this whole complex landscape, right?
Exactly. And you know what? To help us navigate this landscape a little better, our source material breaks down performance into 4 key areas: task performance, contextual performance, counterproductive behaviors, and adaptive performance. We can unpack all of those.
Okay, so 4 key areas of job performance. Where do we even start?
Well, let's break them down, starting with task performance. That one's, well, it's kind of what it sounds like, right? Getting the work done, the actual nuts and bolts.
Right, hitting those targets, checking things off the list.
Exactly. Think like factory output, or how many lines of code somebody writes, or deals. Close those concrete deliverables.
Makes sense. So it's all about those measurable outputs, the tangible results.
Yeah, and our sources highlighted how even small tasks, when they're optimized, streamlined, they can actually have a huge impact, like a ripple effect on the whole operation.
Oh, right. They gave that example about AT&T, right?
Exactly.
Something about streamlining these tiny tasks and saving millions of hours.
Millions. Just by making these small tweaks, that's the power of looking at task performance, even at that micro level. But that's, of course, just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right, because there's more to being a good employee than just hitting your individual targets.
Mm.
What about how you impact the team, the overall work environment?
And that's where contextual performance comes in. This is where it gets really interesting. It's about going above and beyond just checking off your own to-do list.
Okay, so thinking bigger picture, being a team player, what else falls under contextual performance?
All sorts of things. Helping your colleagues, taking initiative, even, and this is important, constructively challenging outdated processes. It's about being a good citizen of your workplace.
I like that. Being a good citizen,
Yeah.
contributing to a positive and productive environment.
Exactly, because a positive environment, that helps everybody thrive.
Yeah.
But of course, there's always the flip side.
Right, because not everyone's out there being a good citizen.
Yeah.
What about those counterproductive behaviors, the things that can really sabotage a team's success?
Yeah, unfortunately, those are part of the picture too. And our sources didn't shy away from that. They got into it. They actually listed a whole bunch of these counterproductive behaviors.
Like what? What are some examples?
Everything from like little things, maybe exaggerating how many hours you work, to straight up bad-mouthing your colleagues. And then, of course, there's the really serious stuff like theft.
Right, that's a whole other level. It's a pretty wide range of behaviors. And I guess the impact, the severity, that can vary too, right?
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important for organizations to really understand that impact,
Yeah.
how different behaviors can affect individuals and the whole organization, and then, of course, address them head on. You can't just ignore this stuff.
It's like you need that awareness to catch those negative behaviors before they escalate into something really damaging. But let's shift gears a bit. Talk about that final piece of the performance puzzle, adaptive performance. This one seems more relevant than ever in today's world, right?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial now. Things change so fast, you have to be able to adapt. It's all about rolling with the punches, being open to new things, and finding creative solutions when the unexpected happens.
Which, let's face it, it does, like all the time now.
All the time. The unexpected is basically expected now, right?
Right, it's like that saying, the only constant is change.
Exactly. And, our sources brought up how important this adaptive performance was during the COVID pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about a masterclass in adaptation.
Right. Some people, they just rolled with the punches, thrived in that remote work world, while others really struggled. I think it highlighted for everyone how crucial it is to be able to adapt to new situations, new technology, learn new skills, all of that.
To be comfortable with a little bit of chaos.
A little bit of chaos, yeah, because that's the world we're living in now. But even beyond those big, obvious disruptions, our source material goes even deeper. They start to unpack some of those less obvious things that can really throw a wrench into how we measure and understand performance over time.
It really is a whole new world out there, and those who can adapt will have a definite edge. But our source material goes even deeper.
Yeah.
They start to unpack some of those less obvious things that can really throw a wrench into how we measure and understand performance over time.
Right. One of the key concepts they highlight is dynamic criteria. This basically means that success isn't a fixed target, it's constantly evolving. What's considered successful today might be different tomorrow, which makes accurately predicting or evaluating performance over the long term a real challenge.
So it's like we're not just aiming for a bullseye, the target itself is moving.
Yeah.
That's a bit daunting, but also kind of exciting.
It is both. The source material uses the example of the sales world, which is particularly susceptible to those shifting criteria. They mention a study where sales performance fluctuated wildly over just a few years. Was it the salespeople who changed or the demands of the market?
It really makes you think maybe those high performers weren't just slacking off, the rules of the game were changing right under their feet. It throws a wrench into those long-term career plans, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And here's another layer of complexity our sources bring up. Bias. It's everywhere, especially when it comes to human judgment. Past evaluations, personal feelings, even things like unconscious biases can all influence how we perceive and assess someone's performance.
It's like they say we all see the world through our own lenses. But I hadn't thought about it in terms of performance reviews before. So it's not just about our own biases, but how others' biases might color their view of our work too.
Precisely. Our sources give a fascinating example from the world of assessment centers. They found that it was crucial to keep past performance predictions hidden to get truly unbiased performance data later on. It really underscores how important it is to be mindful of how easily bias can creep in, even in situations that seem completely objective.
It's definitely a delicate balancing act. Trying to understand the changing nature of success, acknowledging the influence of bias, and then, hopefully, building in safeguards to make evaluations as fair as possible.
It is. And just when you think you've wrapped your head around all that, our source material throws in another curveball. They challenge this deeply ingrained idea that performance always follows a nice, neat bell curve, with most people clustered around the average.
Right, that classic bell curve we all learn about in school. What's their alternative?
They suggest that in some fields, performance might be heavy-tailed. Imagine, instead of a symmetrical bell, the curve has a long tail stretching out to the right, where a select few dramatically outperform everyone else.
Okay, so instead of everyone clustering around the average, you have a few standout individuals who really skew the curve with their exceptional performance.
Exactly, and they use a very compelling example from the world of professional soccer, Neymar. As one of the highest-paid athletes in the world, his astronomical salary reflects the incredible value placed on those who operate at the very, very top of their game.
It makes sense when you think about it. In a field where even a fraction of a second can mean the difference between winning and losing, having that superstar player can be a game changer.
Precisely. And this heavy-tailed concept isn't just relevant to professional athletes. It has big implications for organizations across all industries. Instead of focusing all their energy on bringing everyone up to average, it might be wiser to identify and nurture those potential superstars, those individuals who have the potential to make a truly outsized impact.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, hopefully this deep dive has given you a new perspective on performance, not just in the workplace, but in any field. It's not just about checking boxes and hitting metrics. It's about recognizing the complexity of human potential in an ever-changing world, understanding that the finish line might move. And sometimes it's those outliers, those brilliant stars who redefine what success even looks like.
Absolutely. And as we've discovered from the sources we explored, understanding both the economic and the behavioral sides of performance, the hard numbers and the human element is essential for navigating this complex landscape.
So the question is, what does success truly mean to you? And what criteria, what measures will best guide your journey? It's definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of job performance. Until next time, keep exploring.